Hello everybody and welcome to Illuminations with Tiina and Fi. I'm Fi.
Hi, I'm Tiina.
Hiya Tiina. And in this series we're going to explore happiness. So we're going to, in the first episode, we're going to look at what is happiness, and then next time we're going to look at some movements and some ways of bringing in more happiness. So Tiina, what's happiness then?
I'd like to tell everyone that just before we started this, I said to Fi, please don't ask me the question, what is happiness? And of course she has asked me that question. Well, I have done some research. I got lots of notes.
Good.
What does the Dalai Lama say that happiness is? Let's go to the man. Let's go to the man.
That sounds good to me.
Yeah. Happiness is not something ready-made. It comes from your own actions. And I totally agree with that. And happiness researchers say the following, or some of them say the following: the overall appreciation of one's life as a whole. And I think that's an important point as well. So number one, something that comes from your actions. And I think there's a choice involved in the happiness. And secondly, an overall appreciation of life. So I don't think that happiness is a constant state. Nobody's happy all the time, and I don't think that's recommended either. I think it's very important to feel different emotions and recognizing those emotions and understanding those emotions. But just this kind of almost like a choice of wanting life to be more happy than sad, and seeing the good things in life instead of the bad things, and also through actions and behavior. If I behave in a certain way to other people, they will respond in a certain way to me, which will then probably increase my happiness feelings while it increases theirs, because we have that nice interaction going on. There's my answer. Take it for what it is.
That's it. I think we can just all go home now.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you for Illuminations this time. We have sorted the mystery of happiness.
Can you just say again what Dalai Lama said? Can you just say again, please?
Yeah. Happiness is not something ready-made. It comes from your own actions.
Now that, I think, is for me absolutely the nub. And it's so interesting because I wouldn't have thought all that until very recently. And I'm kind of separating out a bit what is like joy and contentment, and then happiness. And having read Living with Joy by Sanaya and getting my head around that, I do believe that is a state of being. And actually happiness is something that is, you actively, it's an action, it's a verb, it's a do. And that has been absolutely really brilliant for me in understanding that. And it actually came around from I went to an event with Danny Dorling, who is an Oxford professor, and he writes a lot about fairness, and he writes a lot about fair cities. And he used a lot of research, actually bizarrely, from, I'm just showing the book here, Richard Layard, who I will come to in our next episode in more detail. But he used a lot of his research. And of course, you'll know, Tiina, that the Netherlands and, Sweden and countries around you have very high recordings of being in a happy state.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, really? Yeah, it's true. Seriously, coming out. I was watching because, of course, I was always checking for where Sweden was. And, the UK and the US are very much down the bottom. And this came out, didn't it, a few years ago in some research. And the government then instigated a kind of a research or a kind of questionnaire around what is the happiness of the nation. But he was very interesting, and it does lead out of Richard Layard's work in talking about, where happiness comes from. And I went to see something last week, which is a documentary called Happy, which is brilliant, and I will know more about it for our next episode. But it just keep up the big picture here that, extrinsic, sort of wants, desires, money, houses, clothes, all that, actually is not bringing happiness. And in the last 50 years, our income has gone up. Oh, there's some amazing graphs on it, dramatically. But our happiness just hasn't gone up at all. And in some places, it's actually going down. And what they've noticed is that you've got to have enough money to be happy enough. But actually, once you get to a certain amount of money, it actually can start to have a detrimental effect. And that may come from a whole load of psychological kind of reasoning around fear of loss, all that kind of stuff. But very interesting is that, you know, that how countries where, you know, people have very little, in our way of looking at the world, Western way, they're really, really quite happy. It's quite fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll keep going then. And I kind of find this concept really interesting because, as you know, my goal has for a long time been about contentment and inner peace, my state. And actually, I'm kind of like looking at joy now and looking at how I can go about having joy, and it is through acts connected to happiness, which we'll again explore. But this whole concept that actually the more you have and the more you earn actually doesn't necessarily bring happiness. I mean, Richard Layard, he's an economist. His research is really kind of not the ballpark around on, I keep using that word, not the ball out of the ballpark, and that phrase. And it is really eye-opening when you sit there and you get someone like Danny Dorling putting up slide after slide after slide. You know, you think, well, what's going on? And actually, do you know what was really interesting? It's kind of like our altruistic side gets caught in this as well, because genuinely, you know, people are good. And what they found is they did some research, and, you know, we're talking about a lot of people involved in this, not asking to. And they found that when they asked people about increasing their wages by 1% and a certain amount of the population not having their wages increased by 1%, it actually didn't enhance happiness. But when they actually said everybody can have an increase of the wage by 1%, they reported genuinely more, you know, feelings around feeling happier, which is brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so there is, when I was, you know, working in policy, we knew that it was coming through an economics around happiness. And Richard Layard was very involved in that, in reporting to government. And I just think, what does that mean for us in the Western world? Question.
I don't have an answer to that. I would like to, however, kind of talk about the importance of happiness.
Yeah.
If it's not connected to money, possessions, I think, why am I asking that question? I think some people say, why should I be happy? What's the point in me being happy? Well, I just, you know, I think that this is going to be a difficult one. Backtracking a little bit, I think that we have very much a norm acceptance of an unhappy state. Meaning, Monday morning, we will more readily accept a person getting up in the morning and moaning that it's Monday and coming to work grumpy, and people going, how are you? Oh, it's Monday morning, I'm tired. That's more accepted than a person who gets up on Monday morning and goes, wow, it's Monday morning, I'm so happy to be alive. Oh, the sun is shining, or oh, it's raining, never mind, it's good. Goes to work and it's kind of like, la, la, la. Every day, people go, what's wrong with him? What's wrong with her? That's a bit strange. Nobody's that happy all the time. Whereas the person who comes to work every day miserable is like, yeah, well, life's like that. Yeah. So then that then leads to the question, okay, so why would it then be important to be more of the happy disposition than the unhappy? And I think there's lots of research that says, well, number one, because of your health, because of your life expectancy, because of illness.
Yeah.
And I believe you know stuff about that.
Yeah, you're right. And I was just reading the other day, you know, what happens is you increase grey matter. So that means you get more clarity in decision making and functioning, cerebral reasoning. So they know that through MRI scans, that people who are in a more happy place, we know that people who are not in a happy place, and I mean, we've got to get this in perspective. I think you're right. I don't mean leaping about all the time happy. That would be quite dangerous in some places. And although that could be a belief, that's interesting. Be a really interesting belief. But it's also your immune system gets, you know, decreased if you're not happy. So yeah, you're right. It reduces blood pressure. They've got loads of research out there, and it comes from, as we know, the whole field of positive psychology. It comes from Seligman, and he started with authentic optimism, but then he came out with the whole idea of flourish, and it is linked to optimism. Now, it's very interesting because I grew up in a house where my father did get up every morning and sing and shoot people out the place. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful.
I did. I grew up with a man who was very happy, and most of my partners would know that his line was, you know, it's a great day to be alive. And, you know, I was very privileged. So when you talk about that, I could now begin to realize why it doesn't resonate so much with me.
Oh.
You know, because I think you're right. I think often things can get in the way. Like if I talk, you know, about, as you know, grief, I think my grief of my mum had got in the way of me genuinely being quite a happy person most of the time. And I'm now realizing that, and having spent time recently with you in Sweden, I think I regained that back. But yeah, I wonder if you, and I yearn for people around me to wake up in the morning and go, oh, should we go to get some coffee? And then the rabbit skips across and goes down the rabbit hole. Or whatever it was in Alice in Wonderland. But yeah, so it is interesting. So I don't know whether that is culturally like that, or not culturally, sort of family, whether that influences as well. You're right.
I think that's a huge influence. I mean, you know, as a child, if you see that, okay, Monday mornings you're supposed to be miserable, Thursday nights, Friday mornings, you can start being a little bit happy because that's what your parents have been. You know, we celebrate the freedom outside work, and work is miserable. It will color you enormously. Sorry, I butted in.
No, that's really helpful. I hadn't genuinely realised this until I couldn't actually connect to what you were describing, because actually I realised that even myself, genuinely, I, you know, have loved getting up in the morning. I've always loved what I do, so that's always been helpful. There is a really interesting formula actually, Tiina, and I will repeat it. Martin Seligman found this. They say that happiness and optimism, so I think happiness as well, the research is coming through, and I can't remember the neuroscientist that has done this work too, following on from Seligman, but 50%, right, comes from your genes, they're saying, so it's kind of genetic, but 10% then only comes from your context, so that's your environment, what you earn, blah, de, blah, de, blah. 40% comes from attitude, action. So that is incredible. I only literally was, you know, reintroduced to this last week. And that is an eye-opener again, isn't it? Because, okay, if there's nearly half, I have half, control over half of what I can do to make my day and me more happy. And also, isn't it really kind of interesting about kind of, you know, back to the energy again, that if you wander around, and I've done this, you know, I get all sorts of people talking to me quite, you know, but actually I know that's because sometimes I have a very happy energy when I'm out and about. Taxi drivers, bus people on the bus always come and chat next to me, and I have lovely conversations with people. And I wonder, we're back to energy again. You know, if everybody got on the tube in the morning with you know, it's Monday morning and everybody's going, good day to be alive. Imagine that energy on the tube. You wouldn't have electricity.
It would be fantastic to actually experiment that. Like one day in London on the, what's the worst line? I don't know, Northern Line is a nightmare. You know? So to actually go, okay, nobody gets on without this attitude, and just see what happens on that train. That would just be amazing. Maybe fun to see.
Maybe we could organise it.
Anyway, Fi, amazingly enough, we're out of time.
We are. I was just going to say, Tiina. So interesting. So we kind of explored a little bit about what happiness is. We didn't talk about physiology, but we can do that next time. We've talked about what the research is saying, and we've talked about habit and maybe family, you know, kind of belief around when you should be happy and when you shouldn't be happy. So what question might we set out for our community today, do you think, Tiina? What might we ask?
I don't know. Maybe a simple one like just, what makes you happy?
Yeah, I think that's really good. I know that's really simple, but that really is important, because when we come to next time, it is important to know what makes you happy. So what makes you happy?
Yep.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Tiina.
Thank you. And I will see you. Oh, no.
I look forward to seeing you next time. And of course, anybody who might want to have a comment or join in our conversation, then please do leave a comment below. And if you want to subscribe, that'd be great.
Excellent. See you next time.
See you next time. Bye, Tiina.
Bye.